Glimpses by Penstroke. Variance 1. Fury. Water splashed against the shore of the rocky island, stirred by sturdy gusts of wind from the south. There was no shrubbery to block the wind, no trees for a living creature to take shelter. The island was barren and smaller than a city block. Despite the ever-present sea breezes, the smell of sulfur caught in the Queen's nose as they departed the skiff. They may be dragons, but that doesn't help me understand why they would want to live in such an abysmal place. The Queen says she waited for her guards to disembark. To their backs was the fleet, a few dozen of Equestria's finest ships, flying their colors like peacocks striking about. Ahead of them, the stony path wound up a slope. At the end of the path, the highest point of the island was a flattened plateau. That was their destination, where she would get for face-to-face meeting with the famed Dragon Lord. The Queen's wings twitched. Her instinct was to fly up there. But the Dragon Lord had only agreed to meeting on the stipulation they would not approach by air. Normally she would not bother respecting such a demand, but the dragons had proved more resistant than any other nation that she had brought under her wing. That, and the shadow passing over the island, reminded her that there were observers to keeping her honest. There's bound to be more of them. The Queen mused as she and her guards began walking in the path. There was only one visible dragon in the air, and one dragon floating in the water. She knew the one in the water. Torch, one of the largest living dragons and the previous Dragon Lord. He floated in a turbulent ocean like an irritated alligator. Only the crest of his back and half of his head were above the surface of the water. His eyes were fixed on the Queen as she worked her way up to the path, a few tendrils of smoke sticking out of his nostrils, only to be quickly dispersed by the wind. The Queen could see the glare of hatred in his eyes, though she couldn't understand it. Would you answer a question for me, guards? Her half-dozen guards shifted in their armor, glancing briefly at one another before one spoke up. Of course, Your Highness. Would you want to live in a place like this? Islands with no fertile ground for farming. A kingdom so woefully behind the rest of the civilized world in culture and tech, and education, that I imagine some of these dragons haven't even heard the concept of a wheel before. A country that only has one city. A sandy town that was slapped together over the past few decades. Doesn't really sound like you could hold a candle to Equestria. No, Your Highness. The guards answered in unison. Of course it wouldn't. The Queen says she and her guard detail near the end of the path. The island's plateau was coming into view. They could see a wooden table that had been placed there. Though she was quick to notice that enough of the sitting cushions. Any sensible creature would want their own share of golden aids Equestria is having. It only proves that draconic stubbornness is legendary. And of course the Dragon Lord has proven the most stubborn of any dragon. That is part of what makes me so good at the job. Queen took a few steps, reaching the top of the staircase and rounding a corner to see the table, and two figures standing near the far side. They were Dragon Lord Ember and her greatest knight, Spike. Though both puny compared to Torch, Ember stood equal in height to the Queen, while Spike was a few heads taller. Both had matured in a decade since their first encounter. Spike's wings had grown in, and now he possessed a broad-shouldered, almost heroic physique. Ember was just as strong, though her musculature was befitting of a female dragon. I thought the dragon had hips a mile across, the Queen said as he came to the table, though her attention quickly shifted. Spike, it's been too long. You look really good. Love the wings, but they still can't compare to mine, though that hasn't always been the truth. The greatest wings, the greatest magic, the greatest mind, simply the greatest single pony Equestria has ever had. It's dangerous to believe your own propaganda, Fury Heart, Spike said. Those words were swiftly followed by Ember clearing her throat. He glanced at her, muttered a palsy, and looked back at Flurry with his mouth shut and arms crossed. Oh, Ember, don't be such a party pooper. Spike and I are just catching up. Flurry batted her long, flowing mane before extending her wings. Their size compared to her body was just as important as it had ever been, at twice the wingspan of any alicorn that came before her. Flurry reached across the table with her wing, draping it over the surface in a sweeping motion as her horn glowed. In the wake of her feathers, Flurry left behind a tea set and a set complete of cupcakes. Can't have a diplomatic meeting without refreshments, and I'm afraid Siegewater and Gems don't agree with me. You don't mind, do you? No, of course we don't mind, Ember said with a roll of her eyes. She and Spike sat down on their side of the table. Ember knelt on the ground while Spike sat cross-legged. Flurry remained standing for a few moments longer, using her magic to conjure a fluffy cloud. She settled her toast into a soft cumulus and she began serving tea. So, why do I hear from you anymore, Spike? Certainly scrolls and quills cannot be such a rare commodity out here. That delightful little burg you've built up must have been a place where you could find such supplies. If not, I'm sure I could arrange a few crates to be sent here as a gift. It would be a shame if the young dragons were deprived of a chance to read and write. Ember wrapped the talons of her left claw on the table. You badgered us for months for this meeting, and you want small talk? Florrie finished pouring a cup of tea for Spike, levitated to the far side of the table before starting on her own cup. Spike, really, we must talk at least for a little bit before we get down to business. How's your scar? I trust it's healing well. Spike reached for the cup, but deliberately knocked it over, spilling tea in Florrie's direction. No, it's still a nasty scar, right where you left it. Oh, and I do feel horrible about that. Florrie began raising her teacup, but spoke a bit more before bringing the bread to her lips. So, that disagreement was your fault. Spike began to rise, a surge of smoke curling from his nostrils as fire licked at his lips. That's what you did to Twilight, to Nyx, to Rarity, to everyone else. You can't really expect me to. Spike, Ember said, flurry, her claw reaching out to touch his. That was enough to make Spike clench his jaw and settle back into his seat, though the trails of smoke still billowed from his nostrils to each exhale. When she was sure Spike was back in control, Ember looked to Flurry. You can't ignore me forever. Ember reached out, taking a cupcake for herself. She did not eat it, but set it down on the table in front of her, using it as a replacement for the teacup she had been denied. Florrie kept looking at Spike, simply sipping at her tea and smiling, as if enjoying this entertaining stage show. Only when she lowered her cup from her jaws did she look over at Ember. Very well, business before family. I believe you had enough time to hear the news. The Griffins have joined my glorious revolution. Already their long-abused ancestral home at Griffinstone is under reconstruction. We even dug their old trinket out of that crevasse. Does he think it's about time you took me up on my effort and got with the program? Florrie asked. Our stance has not changed, Ember said firmly. And don't gloat about the Griffins. I have it on good authority you poisoned so much of their leadership that there's only one Griffin left with any political power. A Griffin that just so happened to be part of your cult. Now, aren't you being a tad overdramatic? Is it really a cult? In my opinion, it's just that they really think you're a god and you encourage them. Lori smirked as she took a cupcake for herself. She removed the wrapper delicately with her magic, as it levitated towards her. Kid thought your enthusiasm, and I'm certainly not one to deny any admirers. I am the only alicorn to be born naturally. Mother and father always took it as a sign that I was special. The ponies at the church just stared at their perspective and used my shining example to bring happiness and stability to their lives. Ember was not as delicate with her cupcake. She used a claw to rip the bottom off and tossed it over her shoulder, leaving only the frosted top. Yeah, you'd think a god would have been kinder to her own family. Um, Sometimes the best kindness is a forced retirement. Florrie looked at a huff to her regalia. She had forgone her crown for the visit, but hidden beneath her mane was a gold necklace with a deep purple, spherical jewel set in its center. Besides, Equestria has never been happier under my wise, level-hoofed, and benevolent rule. You're about as benevolent as a toothache, Ember said, starting to pick at the cupcake top, breaking out chunks with her talons so getting covered in frosting. But she didn't care. She destroyed the dessert, letting the crumbs fumble to the table before she proceeded to lick the frosting that clung to her claws. Like what Equestria had before was so much better. Florrie slowly stood, holding her cupcake in her magic, as she broke off a piece and brought it to her mouth. She chewed and swallowed as she looked out across the ocean, back to the table. She scanned the horizon, only to catch the glint glimmer from a cloud in the distance. The inside of her mouth turned up to the slightest of smiles. We've had so many alicorns, so many leaders. That meant we had many differences in opinions and ways of thinking. Those differences led to disagreements. I could see that. In time, friendships would decay. Disagreements would turn into armed conflict. Yes, as my aunt taught me, friendship is a powerful thing. Flurry glanced over her shoulder, seeing Spike's claws dig into the table as his wings twist again. Yet, even amongst friends, there can only ever be one real leader. That's all I'm asking for. Flurry Heart's gaze shifted again, this time to focus directly on Ember. I want to be your friend. You just have to listen to me a little bit. Take it as a constructive criticism. If that's all you hope to gain out of this, my answer stays the same. Ember stood, squaring her shoulders, spreading her wings in a display of strength. The dragons of the Dragonlands will not surrender to you. Flurry sighed, her eyes still fixed on the ocean. She deliberately took her time with the next few bites of her cupcake before speaking. That is a shame. You're a smart leader, Ember. Really, I wouldn't have dethroned you. You would still read these. She paused a moment to look at a small stone near her hoof, causing it to tumble down the mountainside. Beautiful islands. Flurry sighed again as she tossed her cupcake into the air. I suppose I'll just have to become friends with your replacement. Flurry's cupcake reached the pinnacle of his arc when it was suddenly split in two. Flurry heard the rush of air and twang of an arrow hitting stone. She didn't hear a body hit the ground, but the sound of Spike standing from his seat let Flurry picture the scene behind her all the same. She imagined Spike linked up to catch Ember's now limp body, his blood flooded over her scales, bracing her as the light left her eyes. I am sorry, Spike. Flurry's voice sounded sympathetic, but there was no denying the smile on her lips. I know it seems I'm always killing those you care about, but it's for the good of the world. Ember was like Nix. She just wouldn't see reason, and you were tangled in her influence. Still, I'll make it up to you. How about I let you guard the royal treasury? It's grown to be an impressive hoard. You sleep on that for a few years. I bet you'd be bigger than Torch. Though if you want to be Dragon Lord, I could certainly see that happening if you... I'm sorry. You have to be Dragon Lord for... I'm going to be Dragon Lord for a little longer. The smile fell from Flurry's face as her head turned around, eye twitching. She looked at Ember, who was still standing proud and tall. The arrow, enchanted with a number of deadly curses, launched magically from a vast distance, was not embedded in Ember's chest or head, as Flurry had ordered. It was dug into the table, managing to pierce halfway before coming to a stop. The dragons will never bow to you! Ember snarled. Must I do everything myself? The horn glowed. Her eyes flickered a few shades darker. Before Ember could react, her feet was encased in dark crystal, pinning her in place. Ember tried to pull herself free. Spike shook up to stave to help, only to be blasted squarely in the chest. Such a blow wasn't meant to pierce his dragon scales, but it did knock him back, slamming into a rock that bordered on the negotiation area. Now if you hold still, I'll try to make this quick. Ember continued to tug at the crystal, trying to free herself. She was right. You planned this all along. She, Flurry said, her horn glowing. Ember, my dear Ember, do you have a spy? She must be quite impressive to discover my plan, though I wouldn't say you're out of the woods yet. Flurry's magic evaded around the arrow. What she knew still bore most of the deadly enchantments that had been placed on it. She yanked it out of the table and drew it back, preparing to drive it into Ember's body with her own magic. Before Flurry could launch the arrow, she noticed a movement in her peripheral vision. Her guards were closing in on her, and the only living pony she had brought with her. 6 guards, host-selected from her ranks by her most trusted generals. But something was wrong. They were all looking at her now with glowing, turquoise eyes. Flurry raised her wings and brought them down. A gale force of gusts, blood hitting the guards. They were knocked back, or rather their armor was. The bodies within became as vapor, swirling out of the metal and around her feathers. The smoke began to solidify. First a sword took shape, slicing the lethal arrow in twain, and causing Flurry's levitation mask to disperse, before a hoof rose from the swirly cloud that collided with Flurry's jaw. Her teeth was forced to snap shut. Flurry's head rang from the blow, and the taste of blood filled her mouth. She beat her wings again, this time getting airborne as she brought a hoof to her lips. Her nerves were screaming, the pain ringing in her head. She cast a spell, something to force the pain aside, but then she felt something rolling around her mouth. She spat it out, caught a levitation spell, and raised it to her eyes as she could get a good look. It was the tip of her tongue, cut off by her own teeth. "You Tartarus filth! I'll see you executed for this!" Flurry said, her teeth strained with blood as some of her blood dribbled down her lip to the ground below. "A lethal execution? The last time you just stabbed me in my heart." The familiar voice came from the smoke as it swirled, an equine voice and form taking shape. A black alicorn with a blue shield key mark materialized in front of Flurry, her body clad in a bronze armor and a dragon lance. "I killed you!" Flurry Heart hissed as he began flying higher. "You tried." Nyx leapt forward, her own wings spreading as he pursued Flurry Heart in the air. Flurry was the first to act. Her horn glowed as she summoned great blasts of energy. Such blasts decimated battalions, but Nyx surrounded herself in a shimmering bubble shield. The magical blast crashed against Nyx's barrier, but did not penetrate it. As the duel in the air began, fighting broke out below. Ember raised her voice, and the ground of Rocky Island shook. Dragons, who had been buried up to their nostrils, sprang from beneath the dirt and stone, flying at Flurry's escorts of ships. The vessels were protected with anti-fire enchantments, but they were no match for the sheer amount of flame spewed out. Spike himself led part of the charge. With his bare claws, he was tearing through the crystal golems that were Flurry's forces, scattering them to the ocean floor. "So, you're Ember's spy!" Flurryheart said, as he gave it up trying to tend to her bleeding tongue. She focused on casting spells, launching single, mighty blasts, as well as volleys of hundreds of smaller energy bursts. Even as her lips and teeth were stained red. "You're her eyes and ears! You knew all my plans! You deflected the arrow!" Nyx swung her sword, nearly striking Flurry across the chest, while her barrier spell continued to hold off the barrage of magic thrown at her. She offered no reply to Flurry's accusations, eyes focused entirely on the battle as she was. And Flurry darted and wove into another in the air to above the raging battle below. "So what did I kill that day?" Flurry blinked to one side, trying to blast Nyx's shield from another angle. "A clone?" The barrier spell held strong from all sides, forcing Flurry into a new tactic. She flew high, spread her wings, and summoned a volley, hundreds of tiny spines of magic that could turn anything into a pincushion. Yet Nyx did not flinch. She just stared Flurry down as she remained protected by her indomitable shield. Flurry grated her teeth as she watched her spines bounce off Nyx's shield like toothpicks being flung against iron. "No, if it was just a clone, you wouldn't have waited this long." She dived into a dive, a large spear of magic forming at the tip of each wing. When she got close, Flurry brought her wings forward, slamming her magic into the sides of Nyx's barrier like wrecking balls. Yet the shield still held, not even showing a crack. "So how did it happen, dear cousin? How are you still alive?" With her magic failing to pierce Nyx's barrier, Flurry Heart dove to the battlefield below, picking up a half dozen of her own crystal golems before turning, chucking them at Nyx like catapult boulders. Nyx lowered her bubble shield for a moment, relying her aerial skills to dodge the attacks. She banked, dove, rolled. When Flurry Heart had thrown the last golem, she countered her attack, a burst of lightning from her horn. Flurry Heart raised the shield for herself, grinding her teeth as she braced. Nyx's spell triggered. The lightning struck. The sound of thunder rang in Flurry's ears, and the flash of light blinded her. She cursed, closing her eyes and rubbing them with a hoof as she kept the barrier spell up. The moment her vision began to return, she looked forward again. Nyx was just outside the barrier. Enough of Flurry's shield spell, the pair might have smelled another's breath. Nyx drove her sword forward, magically formed blade piercing the shield. Flurry tried to dodge, but the blade found flesh. It cut through Flurry's necklace, slicing the chain off and leaving a deep gash along the base of her neck. Flurry used another great beat of her wings to push Nyx away, giving herself a moment to think. The pain of the new wound, and the ease of which Nyx had pierced the barrier, left her enraged. That, and her tongue was still bleeding. Her chin now strained with the blood she had been sipping out of her mouth with every spoken word and breath. Flurry glanced at her escort. Most of the ships were sunk. When the last fell, the dragons would turn their attention to her. "Next time, you'll stay dead!" Flurry spat before her horn surged with magic. In a flash, she teleported herself. Her magic whisked her back to her kingdom. A throne room in the Crystal Empire, her capital. Voice then rang out, filling the whole castle sinking into its foundation. Get the doctor, get the generals, get me the head of whoever was supposed to cremate next! We didn't get her, Spike says. He stood with Ember at the negotiating table, claw resting on her hip as they stood close to one another. We couldn't have killed the day even if we wanted to. You know that. Nick says he kept from her landing. Our only goal was to keep Flurry from killing Ember. All the other things we accomplished today were a bonus. Ember nodded. You're right. I'm sorry you had to reveal yourself. Even if Flurry knows I'm alive now, it's not like she'll be able to find me. Nyx let her sword dissipate, lingering drops of Flurry's blood evaporating from the heat of the spell's dispersal. Shape-shifting and chromatic make a very effective combination. If anything, her paranoia just might make her create some critical mistakes. Maybe, Spike said. I'm happy Ember's safe, but we had her standing right there. Slumming down, sitting on the edge of the table. Even if we couldn't have killed her, maybe we could have, after all these years. He was cut off by a gentle touch from Ember, her claw touching the small of his back, feeling the rough scar tissue between his wings. Spike smiled and took a hold of her free claw, nodding a silent thank you. I just wish we could accomplish more than sinking a few of Flurry's ships and giving her a punch in the jaw. Well then, maybe this'll cheer you up, Nick said, using her magic to hold up a golden necklace that had been around Flurry's neck, one with a large purple jewel. Though, I think she may be a little disappointed her spiky wikey is all grown up and has a girlfriend now. Spike and Ember's bodies tense. They glanced at one another, then back at the necklace Nyx was holding aloft. Spike raised his trembling claw, holding out his palm so Nyx could lower the necklace into his grip. Drew it back to him like it was made thin, frazzled glass. When you said she had... His hand glowed for a moment. Then the smell hit Spike's nostrils, breathing a deep, strange calm passing over him. That's Rarity's perfume, even after all these years. It's hard to forget. Ember said playfully as her claw continued to rub the tender scar on his back. Sometimes, I think she bathed in that stuff. Turning them back to normal may not be possible. Nyx used her magic to remove her helmet, mane changing from a smoky field to a strands of purple hair. At least she's not in Flurry's grasp anymore. Flurry, having Rarity's eyes for detail, almost got me busted a few times. That's not including Rarity's power as an alicorn. Without that necklace, we're much closer to finally stopping Flurry Heart. That's good to hear, Ember said as he leaned to Spike a little. Spike and I should get back to the city and planning our next move. You do that. I need to get back and resume my cover identities before any of them are missed. I'll send a Dragonfire message once I've had a chance to gauge Flurry's reaction to... You call it what it is next, Ember said. We just declared war. Yeah. Nyx says he spread her wings, prepared to take off. But we did it with style. Anyway, I'll be in touch. Stay safe. With that, Nyx took off, rising high into the air before teleporting herself, and heading back to the mainland in her duties. Ember and Spike watched the spot she disappeared in for a few seconds before Ember spoke. You know, you two didn't tell me how she was alive. Ember looked over Spike. Told me how it looked like Flurry murdered her right in front of you. Nyx told me how she fled to the mainland to find you. I never heard how she survived. Be a shame if Flurry Heart found out before I did. Spike stood for the table. In one claw, held the gem necklace that was Rarity. His other claw hugged around Ember's body on her hoof. She did survive. The dagger melted and scattered her magic and memories to the wind. Spike smiled. Then again, my little sister knows this old stallion that's really good at putting dispersed magic and memories together into a living mare. Variance 1. What if Nyx had to fight her family?